What I was going to do for the hour roughly that we have, or actually 65 minutes, is that the first half hour, what I'll do is present to you, I would say, strategy for the office, vision for the office. Takes about 30 minutes. And then that would leave the remaining time, about 30 minutes, for questions. And I guess we still have to submit questions by yes. But I would say, given the smaller room here, we could certainly entertain if there's a question from the audience. You're so would like to just raise it in that manner. Okay? Okay. Went back. Go backwards. Okay. All right, so conflict comes down to the clash of wills between human beings, which really establishes the human domain as the foundation for military tactics and strategies. This foundation is depicted here with the human domain encompassing the cyber domain, within which are the physical domains of electromagnetics, or EM, and air, land, sea, and space. In modern conflict, humans assert their wills through cyber and cyber-physical machines that operate in these physical or these other domains. For example, aircraft, submarines, armored vehicles, or spacecraft. The human domain is defined by individual and group behavior of human populations, as well as by the institutions and processes established by humans. The human domain is dynamic. It includes social networks and political and economic systems. Cyber, unlike air or sea, is not a natural domain, but a human creation originally developed to facilitate operations in these other domains. But certainly the complexity of cyber has grown to where it has become an operational domain unto itself. Information is generated and consumed in the human domain primarily, and it is stored, processed, distributed in the cyber domain. And we refer to this interweaving of information across the cyber and human domains as the information ecosystem. This chart is an expression of Moore's law, which is a major driver of information ecosystems. The chart shows the exponential increase in cost efficiencies for processing, memory, and hard disk storage. If we look at the processing cost efficiency with the blue dots, we see that we've gone from about, and I know you readily can make these transitions, about $1 trillion per million instructions per second in the 1940s, which of course would be a basically impossible task at that time. And why did I pick the 1940s? Well, that was the time where Alan Turing built his computer to help crack the German code machine Enigma, a computer really built from really bulky electromechanical relays. So you see here quite a spread of technologies. And of course, that takes you to the 2000 time frame where it's $1 per million instructions per second. So this 12 order of magnitude jump, or trillion-fold increase in processing cost efficiency over 6 decades, really continues to drive the explosion in information technology around us today. One manifestation of this explosion is shown in the lower right corner of the chart, where we see the number of internet users growing from millions to billions in a little more than 20 years. Now, this growth certainly underscores the synergy between the human and cyber domains, which really defines today's information ecosystems. So mastery of information ecosystems really requires proficiency, I would argue, in 3 core areas, which map to our 3 strategic thrusts. The human-machine symbiosis thrust has as its goal to partner with machines, where a machine is not there to, well, where a machine functions more as a colleague than merely as a tool. And symbiosis is very fundamental to the information ecosystem. In analytics, we need analytical tools and technologies to rapidly transform data and information in the information ecosystems into effective courses of action supporting conflict resolution, stabilization, and other complex challenges. Our office is really working to keep the Department of Defense at the forefront of this analytics technology with the goal to understand the world. And finally, we aim to deter cyber attack against the information ecosystems through the development of technologies for cyber resilience, cyber situational awareness, and accurate and calibrated cyber response capabilities. I will describe each one of these thrusts, starting with symbiosis. The advance of technology has evolved the roles of humans and machines with respect to the data-wisdom hierarchy, where data is the raw material of our sensory experience of the world around us. Information is the facts derived from data, the who, what, where, when. Knowledge is how the facts relate to each other. Understanding addresses the human need for explanation. And wisdom is sound judgment leading to actions to achieve desired goals. Now, on the right is a blue bar. And in the beginning, humans handled all tasks across this data wisdom hierarchy or spectrum. With the advent of machines, we recognized how they could help us do things faster, better, cheaper than by ourselves. We started with machines performing low-level data and information processing tasks, freeing humans to concentrate on higher-level endeavors involving knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Advances in AI are making it possible for machines to partner more with humans at the upper end of this data wisdom spectrum or hierarchy. And we refer to AI or view it in terms of three waves. And I'm going to just describe a bit those three waves on the following charts. The first wave of AI is also known as handcrafted knowledge or rule-based systems. And we feature three applications here, going from left to right. Planning and the support of logistics of, say, shipping containers, tax preparation software, and even the game of chess. First wave AI has been effective in pretty narrow applications, but it must really be pre-programmed by human experts and has no capability for learning. It isn't to say first wave doesn't have value and purpose, but we certainly want to look on to the further waves. And when that takes us to the second wave with statistical machine learning, we certainly have heard a lot about that here at DARPA at the D60 so far. Second wave is also known as statistical or machine learning. And really here we feature two well-known consumer applications of machine learning AI, with on the left, voice recognition featuring Siri, and on the right, face recognition by cameras. Now, I should note, in case you haven't heard it in Dave Gunning's part of the talk in the AI breakout session yesterday, that Siri actually is the direct result of major investment in AI by DARPA over 10 years ago through a program called Personalized Assistant That Learns, or PAL. Second wave AI does require an enormous amount of data to be able to train functions like deep neural networks that can, for an example, classify images. But, of course, there are limitations, and this second wave AI can really address relatively narrow applications. A computer today using second wave AI would likely be able to identify many of the objects that appear in the following scene. For example, identify the man, the bowl, the sofa, and possibly even the fact that the man is eating something. However, this computer would really fail quite miserably if really trying to be able to determine what is the likely activity of the man in the scene, which is watching perhaps a suspenseful movie on TV or even perhaps a sports event. But in this sports event, I think we look by the expression on the man's face, it's probably something that the opposing team did to his favorite team, maybe an interception and running into a touchdown. But what's interesting is how humans can quickly make this inference. And we do so because of how we use contextual reasoning to integrate that glow on the back wall, the shadow of the man's head, the expression on the face, even the fact that that popcorn bowl is pretty full, since sitting down there. We all take that in along with all the objects in the scene. And so third wave AI is really striving towards more human-like reasoning in being able to recognize new situations and make inferences about them with little a priori training data. Equipping machines with more human-like reasoning and communication capabilities will make it possible for humans to more effectively teach and correct machines as they interact and cooperate on more advanced high-level tasks, thereby really opening the door to stronger symbiotic partnerships between humans and machines. So I'm now going to describe a couple of programs really selected from a pretty significant portfolio in our office that really illustrated the advances that we're making in AI to help support human-machine partnership or symbiosis. So imagine a machine able to read all the books in a library and then transforming this information into relevant causal explanatory models. Imagine a machine able to read all the books in this library, or excuse me, imagine a machine able to, that the cure to cancer was scattered across all the books in this library, and then using such a machine to find this cure. Our big mechanism program is developing technologies to read thousands of research abstracts and papers, extract pieces of causal mechanisms from these papers, assemble these pieces into more complete causal models, and then reason over these models to provide explanations. The domain focus for the program is cancer biology, with emphasis on understanding the complex signaling pathways associated with the RAS or RAS protein, a protein that's implicated in many cancers. What is clear to me is that we've reached the point in science, and I would say for defense and security as well, where machines are playing a prominent role in helping us address very challenging problems. Now, people exchange complex ideas very efficiently using ambiguous words within a shared context. Consider the following example. A person picks up 3 wooden blocks, leaving a 4th block on the table, then proceeds to stack these blocks one on top of the other. The person turns to another and says, quote, "add 1 more," unquote. People get these 3 words effortlessly, but today's computers would fail miserably. Our Communicating with Computers program is working to make it possible for a computer to talk with a person like 2 people do, in which an ambiguous phrase like "add 1 more" is understood by the computer within the context it shares with its human partner. To allow machines to be able to engage in free-form activities such as shown in this chart, they really need to be able to reason about the physical world and about people. We are exploring how machines can acquire a common sense reasoning about the physical world. For example, about gravity, friction, or how objects occupy space. Right now, machines lack such reasoning capability, and they must be trained for virtually every eventuality, which is expensive and ultimately impossible. For humans, the acquisition of knowledge important to common sense reasoning really starts at birth and is essential to our functioning in the world. So in the chart, I show here a child at play. I like to think that his focus on the ground is indicative of a decision based on common sense reasoning about the physical world. Now, we know kids don't always have common sense reasoning about the physical world, but really better to descend than to really climb further on that rickety tower of crates and risk possibly falling. Well, so for machines to become more effective, better partners, they really need to acquire common sense knowledge and reasoning approaching that, at least that of a child's. Our ultimate objective is to bring the complementary powers of humans and machines to bear at the higher end of sound judgment and wisdom. And providing machines with more human-like intelligence will make it possible for human-machine partnerships to solve problems of ever-increasing complexity, which really takes us to our next thrust of analytics and its goal to understand the world. Conflict and stability involve not only an adversary or adversaries and ourselves, but the environment and the relevant human populations and their institutions. The human domain is an increasingly important aspect of military strategy. What has changed is the capability to engage populations at a global scale through the connectedness provided by the internet, social media, and other information ecosystems. We need data, analytical techniques that are able to rapidly transform data and information in these ecosystems into effective courses of action supporting conflict resolution and stabilization. Understanding the world and resolving conflict drive us towards a new data-centric paradigm, which is really illustrated here, where key challenges include the collection and curation of data at scale, and in assuring the privacy and integrity of data. Analysis is breaking a complex problem down into its constituent elements, and then studying their relationships and interactions. And we really want to move beyond correlative analysis to causal explanation. Synthesis here refers to the construction of causal explanatory models from data, information, and knowledge. And engagement in the human domain involves multiple channels, including that of social media and cyber. So now I will describe a couple of programs, current programs, that are developing analytics technologies in support of conflict resolution and stabilization. So we have a program to help us make sense of complex situations and events by overcoming the noisy, conflicting, and potentially deceptive nature of today's data environment. The program is called Active Interpretation of Disparate Alternatives, or AIDA. And the goal of AIDA is to create technologies for aggregating and mapping different pieces of information derived automatically from multiple media sources into a common storyline or narrative, and then generating and exploring multiple hypotheses about the true nature of events, situations, and even trends of interest. The program also hopes to establish a level of confidence for each piece of information and for each hypothesis that is generated. Now, I emphasize the program does not take the human out of the sense-making loop, but enhances the human's ability to keep track of multiple interpretations, avoid falling into the trap of a single interpretation that could be wrong, or it could be heavily influenced by the purple smoke here shown on the left side of the chart of noise and disinformation. So imagine now you're the commander of a joint task force to stop piracy off the coast of East Africa. You recognize that you must first make sense of this complex situation before taking actions. For example, you could go out and try to sink all the pirate boats, but that actually could make the problem worse. But you do need to make sense rapidly, and so you turn to the assistance of a machine. So you start with your smartphone. Ask your smartphone or Alexa or whatever, how do I stop piracy off the coast of East Africa? I think I get maybe a bunch of references on Africa and piracy, and you know this isn't going to work. So we actually started this program called Causal Exploration of Complex Operational Environments to develop technologies for the automated generation of qualitative and quantitative causal explanatory models, such as illustrated by this complex diagram here, which is complex, but it is a way to start to make sense of your operational environment. And having such models, you then can allow the commander to ask questions or help at least give insight on questions such as why did X happen? And maybe to explore what will happen if I do Y. Again, though, within the tempo of the kind of operation that they're undertaking. Looking to the future, our goal is to achieve a holistic understanding of the multidimensional human domain that is sufficient for constructing courses of action supporting conflict resolution and stabilization. Now, a major challenge is identifying and managing key features in this multidimensional terrain. For example, the high and low ground in the geospatial dimension, critical software and hardware elements in cyber, or key nodes and connections in social networks. Now, as shown here, we can envision a stack of chessboards where each board corresponds to a dimension in the multidimensional operational environment that is the human domain. One of these dimensions is cyber, and of course that takes us to our third and final thrust with its goal to deter cyber attack. We organize our cyber technologies, our cyber deterrence technologies into three areas with objectives to, one, strengthen the cyber resilience of our networks and systems, which include cyber physical ones such as the electric power grid. Two, we want to achieve broad cyber situational awareness, which includes attribution of attackers. And three, we want to create accurate and calibrated cyber response capabilities. So I will now go through each of these areas, starting with resilience. And as some of you might have seen this morning, I'm borrowing some of my cartoon charts. So metaphorically, we have constructed for ourselves a cyberglass house at which adversaries may freely cast stones. Now, of course, we want to make our house resilient against such attacks, and we recognize that construction plays a big role in resilience. And I might add here that really is emphasized by on the left side of the chart where we see a friend really working contentedly while the stones bounce off the house harmlessly. Now, to achieve this goal, we really are focusing on amplifying recent successes, such as in high assurance software and in automating the neutralization of cyber threats followed by rapid recovery. So a substantial and prolonged disruption to electric power would have a profound effect on the United States. From a defense perspective, a major power outage could impair military mobilization or hamper the ability to project force. So our rapid attack detection, isolation, characterization systems, or RADICS program, seeks to enable the black start recovery, thank you, John, of the power grid amidst a cyber attack on the U.S. energy sector's critical infrastructure. The RADICS program is developing technologies that cybersecurity personnel, power engineers, first responders can use to accelerate restoration of cyber-impacted electrical systems. And program technologies will hasten this recovery by maintaining situational awareness, enabling network isolation, and rapidly characterizing cyber attack. So this is one program as an example of resilience. Clearly, there are others that in our office portfolio. But coming back now to our three areas, what's very important is we want to also understand who is throwing stones at our glass house. Or in other words, we want deeper insight into and greater situational awareness of adversarial activity. And DARPA is applying technologies such as data analytics and machine learning AI to really achieve greater situational awareness. So our cyber hunting at scale, or CHASE program, is developing cyber hunting tools for the real-time cyber threat detection, characterization, and protection for a network the size of the Department of Defense's Information Network, or DoDIN. Now, the DoDIN serves millions of DoD employees and is several times larger than the biggest corporate network. Today, we have tools that automatically allow us to process logs and NetFlow data to look for anomalous behavior that could indicate cyber threats. And then flagged anomalies are then sent to a human operator who then can follow these investigations manually. Now, clearly, that's not a very scalable approach. So in order to address a network the size of the DoDIN, we really need the right data from the right devices at the right time. The cyber threats that are detected and characterizing using CHASE methods at really the local network level inform an automated data planner that goes out and requests cyber-relevant data and also generates and disseminates protective measures. In addition, CHASE also seeks to move beyond local threat detection to being able to identify globally visible yet locally invisible threats. So this program is just getting started, one example of the DARPA programs in our portfolio, but if successful, it'd certainly bolster the cyber defense posture of the Department of Defense and ultimately the nation. So once we know who has been throwing stones at our cyber glass house, of course we'd like to have multiple options for an accurate and calibrated response. Just as we see our friend here actually doing really quite well in this chart. Well, to help reach this goal, we are developing technologies to expand our cyber response capabilities. The Plan X program has really created a mission command platform for cyber operational planning and execution. In addition to providing a common operating picture of cyberspace that extends from network topologies down to individual programs running on a given computer, it also has built up a set of automated tools for cyber operators who cannot be assumed to have degrees in computer science, electrical engineering, or related fields. These tools include the automated analysis of cyber courses of action. Third-party apps providing a range of capabilities can be accommodated through the Plan X App Store. Other notable features include laptop deployability and the ability to train while conducting operations. So looking from our cyber perspective, it really comes down to this equation, where cost and benefit here are from the attacker's perspective. And so we want this ratio to be low. Unfortunately, the current state of affairs is that the benefit from a cyber attack, at least to the attacker, is usually high, while the cost is low. And so this low cyber deterrence ratio can incentivize prospective attackers. Our goal is a cyber future where this imbalance is reversed, where the benefit from an attack is low and the cost high. And to really help accomplish this goal, DARPA is developing technologies that will result in stronger cyber resilience, broader cyber situational awareness, and accurate and calibrated cyber response capabilities that should convince any bad actor that malicious cyber actions will not yield sufficient benefits given their likely costs. So in summary, I2O as an office is focused on the information ecosystem spanning the human and cyber domains. In particular, we are working on enabling a true symbiosis of human and machine to apply data and information to understanding and constructing effective courses of action supporting conflict resolution, stabilization, and other complex challenges, and to create technologies that empower the deterrence of cyber bad actors. We are excited about a future where machines have common sense, sound judgment, other levels of wisdom, because this can really help make machines more effective partners in addressing areas such as analytics and cyber deterrence. And so the words of J.C.R. Licklider, who was the first director of an information technology office at DARPA, are increasingly prescient. Where he said in 1960, in not too many years, maybe he was a little short on that, or underestimated, human brains and computing machines will be coupled together very tightly, and the resulting partnership will think as no human brain has ever thought. Now, it is the I2O program managers who really develop the programs that realize a vision and strategy as really outlined here today. This chart really presents you with a list of the current I2O program managers. Now, some names appear more than once because a number of program managers have programs in different thrust areas. The link at the bottom can provide you with more information as to the program managers themselves, and of course, there's profiles in each one of the program managers in the D60 app. So with that, that completes my sort of remarks, and I'm happy to take questions from you all. Okay. All right, I have a couple questions. I'll read them, and then we'll go from there. The I2O AI strategy to partner with machines is exciting. What technologies are you developing to enable this vision? Well, I only featured two here today. For example, you have Hava Siegelman's program, Lifelong Learning Machines, looking at, and there's Hava. So, exciting program about how can machines continue to evolve. Because today, when you look at machine-trained systems or learned systems, it's fixed in time, and how can you have them continue to evolve? Which then, of course, provokes the question of how do I provide assurance of these systems? And Sandeep Nima has a program called Assured Autonomy, and I talked about that in the talk this morning, where you're looking at the challenge of how do I provide assurance for autonomous systems with regard to learning-enabled components, such as what Hava is going to create. We're looking at new efforts. We touched upon that in looking at the future in regard to this question of common sense reasoning and this aspect of the interesting challenges provided by the third wave AI and contextual reasoning. But maybe that's enough of a sample to give you a sense at this point. You stated that I2O is focusing its analytics work to enable operations in the human domain. Does this include social networks? Well, it certainly does. And Jonathan Fouts has a program called Social Simulation, which is looking at propagation of information through social media as one example. You could argue that a number of our modeling efforts, certainly with Joshua Elliott's program, World Modelers, I think you could say includes that as a heterogeneous collection of models. Now, what I'm saying now are programs that already exist. The exciting part is to engage the program managers. For those of you who don't know DARPA, it's connecting with the program managers and understanding where they might be going in terms of their ideas and what ideas you might bring to the discussion. And I mentioned, of course, Boyan's AIDA program, and I think and then Steve Jameson's causal exploration. So this is an important area, and we certainly value it. Is there something else? And I'm just thinking it may be efficient. If there are questions, we can can stand up and ask the question. How can we achieve cybersecurity in situations where basic cyber hygiene is deficient? Well, we try to make it, maybe you could say, human-proof to some extent. This would be reflected in the programs that we're pursuing in formal methods. How can we achieve correctness by construction? It is limited to the specifications that one places on the system, but Ray Richards, with his program, Cyber Assured Systems Engineering, is an example of that. We're looking with Dustin Frase's program on computer and humans exploring software security would be an example where we're trying, again, can maybe make the best of both there. But that is always an important challenge. We do think it's important that the burden shouldn't be all on the human to be responsible. How can we use technology to provide that relief? So let's see. That's all I have. Oh, one more, okay. Oh, that's okay, Charlene, that's fine. Well, that'll be good. What about using AI to speed up DoD acquisition? Okay. So you may have heard the expression DARPA hard questions. But I would say, Ray, you're looking at such a question. It's a part of acquisition, but in the context of certification, accreditation of software, it actually goes on for months, maybe years, and people put off doing it. So you're actually looking at some new concepts of how you could achieve that. That might be a little bit how we could help with acquisition, at least on the process side. I don't know, any other suggestions there? I'm certainly, we're always open to ideas in that area. Any other questions from the floor? About DARPA, how we engage, how do you interact with program managers? It doesn't have to be anything about the details on the, yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious whether DARPA has an interest in studying that as a problem, since it is, after all, a major hurdle for any transition efforts.
Well, the challenge of transition is always a big one. We're studying it, you could say, every day, because we're always engaged in that. It is a contact sport, as they say. A lot has to do with finding a recipient on the other end who is open towards where DARPA could be, because they have to plan 2 years out. We plan on a shorter time scale, 1 year sort of planning cycle. It can really vary. It is finding, again, someone who is going to be open to a technological solution and then is willing to put at least some potential dollars against it to take it in once it's ready. But a lot of things come into play. You have to have, if it wants to go the path of truly a program going into the services, you need to have the requirements in place, so you're working with people up front. And you want to get buy-in by the operators, meaning the people who are actually going to use it. What we find in the case of software, that can be very efficient, and we can give people the opportunity to look at what could be achieved. But that isn't the whole story. Another path, which actually has been also quite productive for us, is, again, we talked a little bit about this morning in terms of how we try to have our programs put out software that's open source. I should mention there is an open catalog that is pretty much, is very well populated by I2O programs. And that's where you can actually get links to open source software that's been developed under the various programs. Why I mention that is that that's available for commercial companies to be able to take advantage of, turn into ultimately as the basis for products, and perhaps even the DoD then buys it back in that form. So that's a legitimate path of transition. But to study it, I don't know. I think DARPA's a more doer kind of place, unless there's something, Joshua, that you might come up with some of the modeling approaches. Or perhaps Boyan can, I don't know. But it's an interesting question, certainly a challenge. Anything else from the audience? Yes?
The first wave and second wave, you mentioned commercial companies. The first wave and second wave, I've been thinking about this since the AI panel yesterday. Great commercial applications today that weren't obvious or evident when that work was being done.
Yeah.
So for the third wave, maybe I'm being unfair, but it seems like many of your projects are being done somewhat in parallel in commercial labs. Like there's a more near-term commercial viable product that you can conceive of for a lot of these projects.
What would be an example?
Most of those cyber things are...
well, it's true. You do see the use of second wave AI as applied to cyber from anomaly detection, pattern detection. I have yet to see someone actually commercializing contextual reasoning other than...
In terms of what, so I'm in VMware research and I was at Microsoft research,
Uh-huh.
in terms of what those labs are doing today, what they're funding today. So kind of a Heilmeyer push for DARPA of what's not being done necessarily. Maybe I'm being unfair. Maybe.
Well, we're always happy to hear if there's work that already been done. To our knowledge, what we've seen, and I think I saw Dave Gunning come in, if he's still there, maybe not, but I know he held a workshop and looked closely at this question of machine learning, of common sense reasoning. And everything we understand, talking with Jan LeCun and all the leaders who were participants, that it's a really nascent effort. Unless there's some quiet activity that's going on at Microsoft or other places.
No, that's fair, but they're working on it and they're funding it heavily because they see near-term commercial applications.
What would, okay.
So what I'm curious about is for the DARPA work in the first wave, especially, and maybe second wave too, there was, I can't think of what, at the time would have been perceived as commercial applications. It's still 20 years now and we're reaping a lot of new...
Yes, well that's true. It isn't to say that the Department of Defense doesn't bring its own set of particular stressing requirements. You know, as one thing the commercial sector can do is that when it gets to a certain level of risk, as a point I made this morning, that it can think about purchasing insurance. The Department has no fallback there. So the level of, let's say, quality, the quality of service, however you want to look at it, could be generally much higher, and it isn't necessarily a trivial step to go further. Or I think certainly as Hava is looking at is this question of more in an adversarial sense, vulnerabilities to spoofing, these kinds of questions, more particularly in the domain of second wave. I think this is where you start to bring in DARPA. I have to emphasize, it's a very good point being made here is that we really do pay attention to this commercial sector, and we do not want to duplicate what might even be going on there. So it's helpful to hear that, and certainly welcome more insights in that regard. Thank you. Yeah, question here.
Does DARPA think about the future of open source, given that today it feels like in open source everything's pretty safety, but if some of those projects succeed, software becomes much more powerful or empowers people to do certain things, then you may want to overthink the idea of open source.
Well, we're really believers in open source. It was something we talked about a little earlier today, in case you weren't at the plenary. And yes, it comes with that it's available to all, but obviously when you start to get a large community supporting open source, it can be extremely powerful in taking it to a very high level of quality. Wei Shen ran the X-Data program. It's very well represented in the open catalog. I mean, one of the outcomes of that was the Spark capability for data analytics in a cloud environment. And I think if it wasn't for the fact it was open source, it would be nowhere near the quality that it was today. So we recognize that. Obviously, it does, it is available to all. But remember, we want to leverage it as well. And it comes back to benefit us in an enormous way. I mean, the base there that's established for that would be, if you had to pay for that, would be what, hundreds of millions of dollars? Yeah. So I think we're still believers in that, and we support it.
And you're not concerned about security risks, say in the SD2 program, for example?
SD2?
Yeah, the synthetic biology and design program.
Well, Jennifer's back there, so.
So
Well, of course, yes, yes, yes. You see this echoed in, and I know that Jen works with Renee in BTO on safe genes, or have similar interests. Jen, if you want to comment on that, if that's something, or. Yeah. Thank you, Jen. That was, did everyone, I hope all you could hear Jen there. Great. Good question. I hope that gave you some insight there. Sure. Any other questions? Yes. Well, yeah, so that's a really important part of certainly how to work with DARPA in general. Okay, so one thing is the intent of this event, DARPA 60 or the D60, is intended to help at least acquaint the community with that. Hopefully here today, at least in this session, you get a sense of what the office is doing. It didn't map it down to the exact program managers. And one way to do that is the website. There is actually, following that link takes you to the program managers. You can click on that. You can see what programs they have. You can also go to the program summary, and you find out what program manager is running it. And that gives you a sense of roughly the area that they're in. This is just starting, passively looking at information. It can be, of course, you meet someone, you know someone who's working on a DARPA program, and you have the opportunity to meet the program manager. I would say you really do ultimately want to talk to them. You want to go in with an idea that you might have that you think is something new and have a chance to discuss it with them. I always like to advise, certainly come to John Everett or me at the office level, because we, of course, see the entire office can help, say, hey, this would be a good person to talk to. Here's my idea. There's also, we have an open office BAA where you can submit ideas, but I really do recommend if you can engage personally, and of course, here at DARPA 60, or the D60, sorry, I don't want to say DARPA 60, there's that opportunity. So you're in cyber reasoning, did I get you right? Okay. So I don't know, is Dustin here? If he isn't, you should go to the booth. Okay. So that's a start. That's a start. He's at the, I think probably at the booth right now working the demonstrations of Cyber Grand Challenge. I don't know, Ray? I mean, Ray Richards here? He has he took over the HACMS program, High Assurance Cyber Military Systems, which is using formal methods, started by Kathleen Fisher. Ray started the Cyber Assured Systems Engineering program, so there's aspects of that. And I don't know, maybe that's a good start. I don't know, John, anything else? Okay, great. You're welcome. Anything else? Yes, sir.
George Luke's NGA. Today it seems that 3 years is a long program. That most of the accomplishments that we've heard in that first wave, the second wave, were not achieved in that shorter duration.
No.
Am I off base?
No, you're not off base.
Any second thoughts?
You're saying the comment that 3 years is a long time?
In today's environment, it seems to be a long time. To me, it seems like a short time.
Yeah.
I can see many programs today that we brag about that never would have made it in a 3-year time frame.
Well, that's true. I mean, just look at the internet, which was 1969 with the first 4 nodes, and of course, maybe 3 decades later, you start to see its appearance. Well, DARPA's mission is not beholden to that close timeline. Certainly, we're interested from the point of view of transition. Can we achieve that? But average DARPA length, a length of a DARPA program is 4 to 5 years. It more or less corresponds to the tenure of a program manager at DARPA. But there's exceptions, of course, to that. And then, of course, the effect. Now, an example of one, I think DARPA is not doing its job if it is turning around, return in a 3-year time period at most, or even shorter. We had a program. It wasn't in this office. It was called at the time it was called Bullet Ears, and it was it was to geolocate a shooter. So someone tries to shoot at you, and I could, using acoustic processing, signal processing, I could locate that individual. It was demonstrated. Everything worked. The Army did not have a requirement for geolocating someone shooting at you. They didn't have a requirement. So the thing went on the shelf. And I know Ed here, because it was your company who took it forward. What occurred was in the first, I think, second Gulf War, was it? Second Gulf War, we had a problem with snipers and the like. And so what occurred then was someone came back. I think it was Keith Alexander at the time, who was G2 for the Army. Hey, at that time it was Dr. Tether, who was the director of DARPA. Hey, that program, what happened to it? Well, we developed it, put it on the shelf. You guys didn't have a requirement for it. Well, now we do. And one thing cool about it, DARPA went back and actually put effort in and worked with the various contractors to actually now make it a program of record, isn't it? Is it? Oh, still to this day. Oh.
Even though they bought over 10,000 of them, there was no.
I'll be darned. I thought I'd gone to that. Okay. But I mean, that's an example where it does come to have impact. I think DARPA does need to take that view of what technology, so that it's ready when they are in a position to accept it. And it can be, it's an effort, right? Because they only can absorb so much at that point. So I don't think we want to deviate from the longer time view in this case. Okay. Anything else? Oh, sorry, yes.
I'm not sure if this is the right time to ask a simple question, but modernity reasoning is really hard. Automaticity refers to a model of action and its consequence. But if one factor is involved, then we need 2 observations. If 10 factors are involved, we need 2 to the power of 10 observations in order to validate the model of causal relation between the action and required to validate the original model. But we need to release that kind of safety critical systems to the field. But who can guarantee that kind of any safety claim? Even it is evident that the model is a single point of failure.
Well, I think this is a problem. I don't know if, Sandeep, you want to comment on that, how you're trying to approach assured autonomy. If I understood your question right, it's this challenge of validation of systems, in particular for autonomous systems, or not? Okay. I don't know if Sandeep, maybe you want to afterwards have a chance to chat. Yeah. But just to point out, I may want to stand up, Sandeep, anyway, but Sandeep's the program manager for Assured Autonomy. And it's looking at questions such as that, where actually you have an evolving system, where it has learning-enabled components, and how can I continue to provide an assurance case for that system so that it does what I really want it to do, right? So. Great. Any other questions? Again, about DARPA in general, maybe you've gotten a good insight on that. Okay. Yeah? Well, this is an effort really looking more at smaller studies. So the question concerns AI exploration. I don't know, John, did you want to comment on that? Or why don't you say something about that?
Accelerate our investment in artificial intelligence. There is sort of an umbrella announcement that is published at the end of July, and then topics are going to be published within that. So far, we've had one topic that's gone out, Dr. Elliott's topic on modeling. We expect to get to the point where we have a regular set of topics coming out. We're just gearing this up and getting it rolling. So you should expect sort of on a basically maybe a monthly basis or so, depending on ideas as they come in. We will be publishing new opportunities, and then it will take about 90 days from the issuance of publication to contract award. It's all under the OTA, the Other Transaction Authority.
Are you looking at proposing? Okay, you should. There's more to come, right? I guess an earlier one was Jim Gimlet's Physics and AI. It actually occurred before, right, the AIE, yeah. And the fact that it comes out of a different office has no bearing. Defense Science Office, actually, you'll notice they're using their contractual framework, but it's intended to serve the entire agency. So definitely look for those of you who are tracking artificial intelligence type of opportunities. And that's separate from larger programs, right? Just keep that in mind. It's in addition to. Anything else? Yeah? Huh. Well, when you find it, you tell me, okay? So, right, John? It's always, now, and little, to be fair, I mean, you're at DARPA right now, so, right? No, for the Army's perspective, no, I'm good. I'm good with that. I'm just having a little fun, that's all. Well, I mean, it's always a challenge, certainly what has been done in the past, because DARPA is looking always towards the future. But going towards I'd say office leadership is certainly a place to start, or we have then inquiry there in terms of what has been done. You look at ongoing programs. It's still a little hard because what's on the shelf can mean many things to different people, correct? I mean, what maturity is it? One thing we're very careful is we don't want to build expectations for something that may not really be appropriate. So it's you have to be a little careful with science and technology, which is what DARPA is. They are here to really reduce risk to the point where now it's something that can be taken forward perhaps transform into a product. So on the shelf might convey something that's, could be of a certain maturity. And that might be one reason why you want to be careful using that term. But in terms of just what DARPA's doing, then there's ways through certainly the website. I like to point people there. Websites have their limits, but there is information there. The open catalog provides, I think, insight, certainly from a number of our programs, since it's very friendly towards software-centric type programs. And then, of course, talking to the people there. I don't know, I have any other recommendations in that regard, because I'm trying to cover it all there, but do you think that covers it? Okay. Okay. Well, anything else? Okay. See here. Well, we're about 2 minutes shy of, maybe 5 minutes or so. Well, if there is nothing else, and of course now you know who a number of us are, we're certainly happy to take further questions offline. But again, thanks for all coming this afternoon, and enjoy the rest of D60.